Stop for a second and think about the very last time you actually watched yourself apply makeup in slow motion, not just doing it on autopilot but genuinely paying attention to what your hands are doing. Chances are it's been years, maybe decades, because most of us learned our makeup routine once, sometime in our 20s or 30s, and simply kept repeating it every single morning since, without ever stopping to ask whether it still works for the skin we have today. Here's what's genuinely surprising: 5 specific habits, ones that felt completely normal and even correct for years, are quietly making some women look older rather than more polished, and almost nobody ever tells them directly. Today that changes. I'm walking you through all 5, exactly why they happen, and precisely what to do instead, and I promise you by the end of this video you're going to walk into your bathroom and see your own routine differently. Hi there and welcome back to Ageless Style Secrets, the channel where we help women over 60 look and feel genuinely confident, without needing an expensive makeup counter or a routine that eats up your entire morning. If this is your first time here, welcome. I'm so glad you found us, because today's topic is one of the most requested on this entire channel: real honest feedback on habits that might be quietly working against you. And if you've been here before, welcome back, get comfortable, because this list is going to change your morning routine in ways you genuinely won't expect. Quick favor before we get started. If you're new here, go ahead and hit subscribe right now. This channel puts out honest, practical beauty and style advice exactly like this every single week, and you really don't want to miss it. And whether you're new or a long-time viewer, drop a comment below telling me which of these 5 mistakes you think you might already be making. Before we even get into them, I want to see how your instincts compare. Alright, let's get into mistake number 1, because it's genuinely more common than you'd think. Mistake 1. Too much powder, especially in the wrong places. Let's start with one of the single most common habits, and it's one so many of us were taught was essential: generously powdering the entire face, particularly around the eyes, cheeks, and any areas prone to a bit of shine throughout the day. For decades, setting powder was marketed and taught as the finishing step that locked everything in place and controlled oil. And for skin that produces more natural oil, this genuinely can work beautifully. Here's the issue though: as skin naturally produces somewhat less oil with age, and as fine lines and texture become slightly more visible, especially around the eyes and mouth, a heavy layer of powder does something genuinely unflattering. It settles directly into those fine lines and textured areas, making them significantly more visible rather than less, an effect often described as looking cakey, or emphasizing exactly the texture we're hoping to soften. This happens because powder needs a certain amount of natural oil or moisture on the skin's surface to blend seamlessly, and without enough of that natural moisture present, the powder simply sits on top, collecting in every tiny crease and line rather than melting smoothly into the skin. So what's the actual fix here? First, significantly reduce the overall amount of powder used, particularly in the under eye area, around the mouth, and along the sides of the nose, areas where fine lines tend to be most visible. A light, translucent powder applied with a fluffy brush using genuinely minimal product, only where you actually need oil control, typically the center of the forehead, nose, and chin, works far better than an all-over application. Second, consider switching from a traditional pressed powder to a finely milled, lightweight setting powder specifically formulated for mature skin. These tend to have a much finer particle size that sits more seamlessly on skin, rather than creating that visible, textured layer. Third, and this is genuinely one of the most important technique shifts, apply powder using a gentle, pressing motion with a fluffy brush rather than swiping or buffing it across the skin. Swiping motions tend to push powder into fine lines more aggressively, while a light pressing motion allows the powder to sit on the surface without settling as deeply into texture. And finally, if you're someone who genuinely struggles with shine throughout the day, consider blotting papers as your midday touch-up tool instead of reapplying more powder. Blotting papers absorb excess oil without adding any additional product to the skin, meaning you get the shine control you're looking for without compounding that powder buildup in fine lines as the day goes on. Mistake 2. Lip liner applied way outside the natural lip line. Here's a habit that was genuinely everywhere in certain eras of makeup trends, and it's one so many women picked up during a time when this specific technique was considered the height of glamour: lining the lips noticeably outside their natural border to create the appearance of a fuller pout. This technique made complete sense within the specific trends of the time it originated from, but it creates a genuinely aging effect on mature lips specifically, and here's exactly why. As we age, the skin around the lips naturally develops what's sometimes called lip lines or vertical texture lines, and lip color, especially when applied outside the natural lip border, tends to bleed or feather into those surrounding lines far more visibly than it would have on younger, smoother skin. Beyond that, an obviously overdrawn lip line, one that doesn't match the natural shape of the mouth, reads as visibly artificial in a way that draws unwanted attention rather than creating the fuller, more youthful appearance it's intended to achieve. The fix here involves a genuine shift in technique. Start by lining directly on your natural lip line, or at most just barely outside it, no more than a millimeter or two, focusing specifically on the cupid's bow and center of the top lip where a small amount of definition genuinely does add fullness without looking exaggerated. Choose a lip liner that closely matches your natural lip color or your lipstick shade, rather than a noticeably darker or more dramatic liner color, since a liner that blends seamlessly with your lip color is far more forgiving if your hand isn't perfectly steady that morning. Beyond the liner itself, consider incorporating a lip primer specifically designed to fill in those vertical lip lines before applying color. This creates a smoother surface that helps prevent lipstick and liner from bleeding or feathering throughout the day. And finally, choose creamier, slightly more hydrating lipstick formulas over very matte, long-wear formulas specifically for everyday wear, since matte formulas tend to settle into lip texture more visibly, while creamier formulas sit more smoothly and forgivingly on mature lips. Okay, let's pause for a second because I want to hear from you. Between the powder habit and the lip liner habit, which one genuinely surprised you more? Or which one do you think you might already be doing? Drop a 1 or a 2 in the comments. I read every single one, and honestly, I love seeing how many of us share the exact same habits we picked up decades ago without ever questioning them. And if you're finding this helpful so far, now's a great time to hit subscribe if you haven't already. This channel puts out real, honest advice exactly like this every single week. Give this video a like too. It genuinely helps more women who need this exact information find it. Alright, let's keep going because mistake number 3 is one that affects an area so many of us focus on constantly, our eyes. Mistake 3. Heavy, dark eyeliner applied too close and too thick on the lower lash line. Here's a habit that genuinely deserves its own honest conversation. Applying a thick, dark line of eyeliner directly along the entire lower lash line, often in a very dark black or deep brown shade. For years, this was taught as a way to define and open up the eyes, and on younger, firmer eyelids with fewer under-eye shadows or texture, this technique genuinely can look striking. Here's the issue for mature eyes specifically though. As the under-eye area naturally changes slightly with age, sometimes with a bit more visible shadowing or texture, a thick, dark line along the entire lower lash line does something genuinely counterproductive. It tends to visually shrink and drag the eye downward, drawing attention directly to whatever shadowing or texture already exists underneath, rather than opening and brightening the eye the way it's intended to. This effect becomes even more pronounced with darker, more saturated eyeliner colors specifically, since dark colors naturally create more visual weight and shadow wherever they're placed. The fix here involves several genuine adjustments. First, consider softening your lower lash line approach entirely. Rather than a thick, solid line, use a slightly smudged, softer application, using a smudger brush or simply a cotton swab to blend the line immediately after applying it, creating a soft, diffused effect rather than one hard, solid stripe. Second, and this genuinely changes the entire effect, switch from black or very dark brown to a warmer, softer shade specifically for the lower lash line. A soft taupe, warm brown, or even a deep plum tends to define the eye beautifully without creating that same heavy, dragging shadow effect that very dark, cool-toned colors create. Third, consider only lining the outer 2/3 of the lower lash line rather than the entire length, leaving the inner corner near the tear duct free of any dark liner at all. This specific adjustment prevents the eye from appearing visually shortened or dragged down at the inner corner, an area particularly prone to showing shadow and texture as we age. And finally, always balance a lower lash line application with equal or greater attention to the upper lash line and lashes themselves, since a well-defined upper lash line and a few coats of mascara genuinely do more to open and brighten the eyes than heavy lower lash definition ever will on its own. Mistake 4. Matching foundation shade to the jaw or neck instead of the face. Here's a mistake that happens almost entirely by accident, and it's genuinely one of the most common foundation errors across every single age group, but it becomes particularly noticeable as skin tone can shift slightly with age, testing and matching foundation shade against the jawline or neck, rather than directly on the cheek or center of the face where foundation actually needs to blend seamlessly. This habit developed for a genuinely reasonable reason. Many of us were taught to test foundation along the jaw specifically to check it blends into the neck. But the neck and jawline area often has a genuinely different tone than the center of the face, sometimes slightly different due to sun exposure patterns over the decades, or simply natural variation across the body. When foundation is matched specifically to the jaw or neck tone rather than the cheek and center face area, it can create a visible mismatch, sometimes reading as slightly too warm, too cool, or too light or dark compared to the rest of the face once actually applied and blended across the cheeks and forehead, the areas that receive the most direct attention and light throughout the day. The fix here is refreshingly simple once you know it. When testing a new foundation shade, apply a small amount directly to the center of your cheek, an area that receives natural light directly, and is genuinely representative of your overall facial skin tone, rather than testing along the jaw or neck. Allow the foundation to sit for several minutes without touching it. Since foundation can oxidize slightly and shift in tone shortly after application, the shade that looks correct immediately upon application isn't always the shade that looks correct 10 minutes later. Additionally, always test foundation shade in genuine natural daylight whenever possible, rather than under indoor store lighting or bathroom lighting alone, since artificial lighting can dramatically distort how a foundation shade actually appears. If you're shopping in a store, many genuinely allow you to step outside briefly with a small sample applied specifically to check the shade in natural light before committing to a full purchase. And finally, don't assume your foundation shade from 5 or even 2 years ago is automatically still your correct shade today. Skin tone can shift gradually over time due to sun exposure changes, seasonal variation, and simply the natural aging process, making a periodic shade recheck a genuinely worthwhile habit rather than something to do only once and never revisit. Alright, quick pause again because I have a feeling the foundation testing mistake might be a genuine lightbulb moment for some of you. If you've always tested foundation along your jaw without realizing it might not match your actual face, drop a comment saying didn't know that. I promise you're far from alone in this one. And if this video is giving you real value, please take a moment to subscribe if you haven't already. This channel exists specifically to help you uncover these small, but genuinely impactful details every single week. Like this video too, it truly helps more women find this information. Okay, let's finish this list with our fifth and final mistake, and honestly it might be the most important one on this entire list. Mistake 5. Skipping moisturizer and primer, going straight from bare skin to foundation. Here's the mistake that genuinely ties this entire list together, and it's one that happens for a completely understandable reason: time. Many of us, especially on busy mornings, skip the moisturizer and primer steps entirely, going directly from a freshly cleansed face straight into foundation application, simply to save a few minutes. On younger skin with more natural oil production, this shortcut sometimes goes largely unnoticed. On mature skin specifically, skipping this step creates a genuine cascade of problems that actually affect every single other mistake we've already discussed on this list today. Here's exactly why this matters so much. Foundation applied directly onto dry, unprimed skin has nothing smooth and hydrated to grip onto, which means it settles unevenly, clings to any dry patches or texture, and genuinely emphasizes fine lines rather than smoothing over them, precisely the opposite effect we're hoping foundation will create. This single skip step actually makes mistakes 1 and 2, the powder settling into lines and lip color feathering, considerably worse, since the entire base underneath everything else is starting from a compromised, underprepared foundation quite literally. The fix here involves building a genuine, if brief, preparation routine before any color makeup goes on at all. Start with a hydrating moisturizer, ideally one containing hyaluronic acid or glycerin, both ingredients known for drawing and holding moisture in the skin, applied while skin is still slightly damp from cleansing to help lock in even more hydration. Allow this moisturizer a full minute or two to genuinely absorb before moving forward, rather than immediately layering foundation directly on top, while it's still sitting wet on the surface. Next, incorporate a hydrating primer specifically formulated for mature or dry skin, rather than a mattifying primer designed for oilier skin types. These hydrating primers create a genuinely smooth, slightly dewy base that foundation can grip onto evenly, filling in fine lines and texture with a smoothing, blurring effect before a single drop of foundation is even applied. This single step alone often makes the single biggest visible difference of anything on this entire list, since it directly addresses the underlying skin texture that every other makeup product is then applied on top of. This complete preparation routine genuinely adds only 2 or 3 extra minutes to your entire morning, but the visible difference it makes to how smoothly and naturally every other product applies and wears throughout the day is honestly the single most impactful change on this whole list. If you only implement one single change from this entire video, let it be this one, since it genuinely elevates the effectiveness of everything else you're already doing. Bonus section: building a simple, updated everyday routine. Before we close out, let's bring all 5 of these fixes together into one simple practical morning routine you can genuinely follow. Start with cleansing, followed immediately by a hydrating moisturizer while skin is still slightly damp, allowing it a minute or 2 to absorb. Follow with a hydrating primer, focusing on any areas with more visible texture, or fine lines specifically. Apply foundation using a shade tested and confirmed on the center of your cheek in natural daylight, using a light, buildable hand rather than a heavy application. Set only the areas that genuinely need oil control, typically the center of the face, using a light, pressing motion with a fine, lightweight powder rather than an all-over heavy application. For eyes, focus your darkest, most defined liner on the upper lash line and outer 2/3 of the lower lash line only, using a softer, warmer shade for the lower lash line specifically, softened with a smudger brush. Finish lips with a hydrating primer, a liner that closely matches your natural lip tone applied directly on or barely outside your natural lip line, and a creamier lipstick formula rather than a very matte, drying finish. This complete routine, once you've practiced it a handful of times, genuinely takes about the same amount of time as whatever routine you're currently using. The difference isn't really about added time at all, it's entirely about small intentional technique shifts within the same amount of time you're already spending each morning. Closing. So there you have it, 5 genuinely common makeup habits: heavy powder application, overdrawn lip liner, thick dark lower lash liner, foundation shade tested in the wrong place, and skipping moisturizer and primer entirely, along with real practical fixes for every single one. None of these mistakes happen because anyone did anything wrong, they happen because our routine simply hadn't caught up with how our skin has genuinely changed over the years, and now you have exactly what you need to update yours. If this video helped you look at your own morning routine a little differently today, that's exactly why we create videos like this every single week. So here's my final ask. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, so you never miss a new video the moment it goes live. Give this video a thumbs up if you're adjusting even one of these 5 habits this week, and drop a comment telling me which one surprised you the most. Share this with a friend who could use this information too. She'll genuinely thank you for it. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.